She comes from a biotech background and is now working in community building at the MedLabs consultancy group and serves on the board of Her Majesty Queen Reina's Royal Health Awareness Society in Amman, Jordan. With these community building and health awareness campaigns, she instills lasting change in and with communities and creates a genuine connection to customers. Today, we will draw on her wisdom as a connector and doer in an integral world and hope to share a bit of her empowering spirit. All right.
Right, so thank you for having me. I'm going to talk for the next 10 minutes or so about the guiding themes and the questions that were sent to me. So beginning with how I see the current crisis as serving as an emerging opportunity for the globe. I think when I thought about this yesterday, the new paradigm I hope that humanity embraces now is actually integrality, to steer away from this one direction of greed that only fuels inequality, that's only about making money and the me factor moving ahead as opposed to the whole, and realizing that in the face of this tiny invisible little virus, more than ever we realize that how alike we all are. We're all flesh and blood, we're all vulnerable, we all have the same basic necessities of shelter, food, warmth, and basic access to healthcare. And that we take out of this experience a commitment to the world, to work on an ability for survival that's on an equal plane, so that it's not just the rich or the privileged who are going to come out of this or will be able to survive a pandemic too, or the rest of this pandemic, but that we give the tools and we recognize the importance of helping everyone. My greatest fear, I think, is that things ease up and get better, and then in a flash we're right back to where we were before this started, and all the reflection we supposedly did and benefited from in this lockdown period goes out the window, because it's, you know, time to get back to the rat race and the rush and then inevitably the cycle of the greed and the money making, and forgetting the less fortunate, and doing nothing to bridge the gap between the rich and the poor and the inequalities that we see around the world. So I hope the new paradigm that the one that I propose for humanity is to adopt is more equality, more empathy, and more appreciation that the West alone, or the North alone, or the East alone, or the South alone mean nothing. They all complete each other if we want this earth to survive, if we want humanity to survive. With regards to the second question about me and my life journey, so my key message would be well-being is in its own way an integral process that has to be holistic. So even though I work in medicine, I don't believe for a minute that that's the one way to health and well-being. It's really a holistic process of recognizing the importance of wellness in mind, in body, and in spirit, and that the combination of those is what really well-being is about. So that means, you know, recognizing the importance of nutrition, of movement, of mental wellness, of energy, of meditation, breathing, that they're all part of being healthy, and that our own mental and physical health crises were solved. And mine, for example, whenever I've had a struggle with mentally, emotionally, or even physically, the solution was only when I recognized that I had to solve all the aspects of the wellness. And this is something I feel passionate about sharing with others. So in our health awareness and in the projects that we do and the community building that we do at MedLabs, we don't just say, come do a checkup. We recognize that we also need to advocate mental health and nutrition and movement. And so we work with nutritionists, we work with functional medicine practitioners, we work with people in gyms and personal trainers, etc., for everybody to bring their different aspect into what wellness really is. So that you know, my journey has been very conventional thinking, very conventional medicine, but then suddenly being awakened to very Eastern, more spiritual thinking, and then getting into Reiki and energy healing, and then being exposed to more spiritual awakening, but so putting, changing nutrition several times, being vegetarian, being not vegetarian, being vegan, being traveling, seeing all the different models and all the wisdom of different cultures, and recognizing that there's no one answer, but if you take the best of all the worlds and you try to apply them to yourself and your family, that's probably the winning solution. And it would be great that if everybody could appreciate the value of all these different approaches and try to take the best of them for themselves as well. Because that sense of wellness, when it's done that way, makes you feel more connected to one another and more connected to Earth and more connected to communities across the globe. So again, it becomes less me and more that you're one part of this ecosystem of our Earth. How my own home has been a springboard for my transformative contribution. So my home, so in Arabic, home, the word for home is bit. For me, home has always been wherever I feel most myself, most calm, at peace, and surrounded by love. So currently where I'm sitting now, this is my home. And this is a home that I created with my husband and with and for my children. So it's full of my kids' pictures and their artwork, and it's very much a space of our unity. But to be frank, when I lived in Beirut, when I lived in California, when I felt in London, they also felt like home. And I refer to them as home because I felt also myself in some of those places and felt at peace and felt surrounded by joy and love and people and learning. So I don't believe that home is just one place. Of course, your home that you grow up in is the main home for most people, but it can be more than that. So has my home acted as a kind of springboard for me, for how I work with my colleagues, for my community? I think my home has always been open to my team. It's well, I'll give you a tour. You'll see it has a wonderful view of the city of Amman, which often makes me think about the importance of remembering the big picture and recognizing that you're one soul amidst this immense globe that is at once tiny but also vast. I think it's also because I had my children in this house and raised them in this house, and I became very interested in conscious parenting. It's also made me realize how our greatest teachers are, in fact, our children, because they come into the world so pure and so free of conditioning. And so these two aspects of the micro with the kids and seeing how our minds develop and children develop and their innocence and their natural connection to nature, and also looking at the big picture from the viewpoint of my home, that combination has really impacted me, I think. And in that respect, then taking that into my workspace, being interested in exploring both those aspects, the micro and the macro, in everything we do. What's the big impact of what we're doing? What's the small impact of what we're doing? How is this changing an individual? But down the line, several individuals being impacted then have an impact on the whole community and then a society. So I like to think that maybe it comes from the way I see my home. To be honest, I never thought about it until I saw your question, that as a springboard, this space helps me, maybe is influencing the way I work with my team, to think about what is it that we can do that's really meaningful, and then scale that so that it touches more and more lives and then creates an impact on a whole community or society and affects the well-being of societies. So I hope that makes sense. In terms of home for humanity, I have been there. I had the privilege of visiting Alexander and Rama a couple of years ago, which was wonderful. It was a beautiful experience. I have to say I was probably most struck by the global feel of the home, the collection of artifacts from around the world, and the true appreciation of the cultures that those artifacts represent. So a vase or a painting, or, it was not just there for decorative, but I really felt like there was a connection to each piece and a story behind it, and an appreciation of that as a representation of a culture it came from. And I found that very embracing. I found that very down to earth, very, very global and connected. The connection that you feel, that you fit in, because it's not just a place where a certain type of people will feel comfortable and another won't. Everybody feels home. And that's really a blessing, and kudos to them for being able to very naturally make that feel that way. I also was struck by the location, of course. So you stand on their lawn and you have this expansive view of greenery and mountains and beauty, and you also feel, again, like just a small part of this vast earth, but that you can make a difference. So again, small actions, big impacts. I like that concept. And I think homes make us bring our free and true selves to the forefront, our softer sides. And these are not often the sides that we bring to the office, right? So in office spaces, you see a more professional, a more formal, but the minute if you've worked for several months or years with somebody in the office solely, the minute you go to their home, that's it. There's a whole new side to your relationship that naturally occurs, and a whole new appreciation and understanding of one another on a much deeper, more human level, because you've only seen each other in a very professional setting. And with time, I'm beginning to realize that shame on me if I don't know the personal aspect of my team. I don't know where they live or how they live, or if they have kids, or if they if they live with their parents, or what makes them tick, what makes them happy, and so that aspect, I think when you build that, you come out of the teams and more into the tribe, more into a culture among each other, where the values, you're not stating values, you're living them together, you're appreciating them about each other, and they may be slightly different, but at the end they're all very human. And I think that is exactly what we need at this time in our society. Maybe we need to use this time where we're meeting on Zooms in our homes to do a little tour of our home, or I think it's great when you see a child come in. You just get this sense of all the pretenses are gone, and it's very real. And I think that would be very positive moving forward, in the way business is done, in the way offices are run, in the way people come together on a professional, but that professional level then also includes this personal. And so it just becomes more real, and you feel more invested, and more, you care about it more. It's not just a job and you go. There's now a personal connection between everybody on board. So that's how I feel home, how I feel about Home for Humanity, but also how a home can be a window into a much more beautiful connection between people outside of the home, just getting a glimpse of the home. And finally, the question about the Humanity Charter and the Home for Humanity Manifesto. I really enjoyed reading those, so thank you for sharing them. What I love about the Home for Humanity model, and the points that you mentioned in the Charter, is the invitation to be yourself, and to invite others to be their true selves. And it seems like a great way for as I said, these cultural tribes to emerge with the common values for good. And then when these common values come together, and you do, in combination with what I was saying before, think about what you're doing, and how what you have in your mind, and if it's a positive thing and other people believe in it as well, how when you put those together, they're that much more powerful and impactful. And then you go away from the I or the me, which is in the way of business around the world for years, right? And you go into the we space. And that we space is inevitably got to include Mother Earth, right? Because when we're talking about we as part of the globe, then we can't exclude nature and this earth that we all share and live on. And so if you're doing this the right way, inevitably, I mean, you can't just go back to doing your 9 to 5, producing whatever your product is and having no emotional connection to it and going home. You start together to see that everything that we do, no matter what kind of business, has an impact on a receiver. And the more good that impact is, the more it has a happier, more fulfilling impact on, and it's contagious. The happiness is contagious, the impact is contagious, and it has an overall wellness impact on, as I said before, communities, societies, but then also countries, and then the globe, and then you can't be okay with ignoring inequalities, and you can't be okay with just saying me, and pretend, trying to be blind to the rest of the world. You really can't. Once you've opened that, there's no going back. And I don't know anybody who's gone through the journey of integral learning, integral management, and really, really believing in it and seeing the compass of the 4 worlds, and then said, yeah, no, that's not going to work for me. I want to go back to my one little, aspect. It's your selfishness evaporates to a certain extent. Maybe not fully, but it does. So that's what I feel about those questions.
Thank you so much for this. This was really, really nice and so full of your individual thoughts, but always with this global aspect. I really, really appreciate that you broadened your mind to all of this. It was really inspiring to hear. And also, I find it very interesting to speak to you as somebody working in the medical field, where a lot of, as you said, conventional knowledge and wisdom is usually preferred, let's say. And maybe as a side note, I also work at a biology department at a university, because I started studying biology a couple of years ago, but then left again.
Yeah.
So I kind of know that world and the people in it and the beliefs in it, I would say.
I just feel like it's time for that to evolve a little bit. I recently got into two things. One that I've always believed in, which is mind-body healing, that there's always been a connection. This is something I've spoken to Alexander deeply about, but also nutrition. And it has shocked me to the core to find out that conventionally, medical schools don't teach nutrition as as anything, but more importantly, as a tool for building immunity. Because more and more studies are showing, whether it's mental wellness or nutritional wellness or movement, these are all a natural way for the body to arm itself with immunity. And for too many years, I think medicine has done a great job of creating medicines for a symptom. But now I just recently did a workshop on something called functional medicine, which is saying, okay, that's great. I have diabetes, I take this medicine, but isn't it better to find out what's the root cause of the diabetes and solve the root cause, which could be historically going back to really from the time you were born, a chronicle of all your life's events, and all the deficiencies you've had in your body, or the exposures you've had, whether trauma or pollution, or so many different things that led up to this, plus genetics, plus family history, plus how your diet has been, etc. But that if we don't solve the root cause, then we're just medicating for everything that comes up. And by the time you're in your 70s, you've got the blood pressure and the diabetes and the high cholesterol, and you're taking this box of medications that all have interactions and all have side effects, but nobody's stopping and saying, well, wait, maybe there's an imbalance in the gut flora, or maybe your body has too much acidity, or maybe, and you can go into the conspiracies of, right, pharma companies just want to sell their medicines and all of that, and there's plenty of books about that. I definitely recommend the book Selling Sickness. I don't want to go there. Conventional medicine has done an amazing job for us, and but you also have to think of quality of life versus quantity of years, because medicine is designed to make us live longer, not necessarily live better. And when asking how can we live better, then we need to look at root causes. We need to understand ourselves, and we need to go back to what I was saying earlier, understanding that well-being is a holistic approach. It's an integral approach. It's not just one thing or the other.
Yes, I completely agree with that. I've been reading a lot about um, sleep medicine, but also all these insights that are now coming up about the gut microbiome,
Mm-hmm.
which is, it just sounds like conventional medicine is catching up to something that has always been around. We have always told each other that they're, sleep well and then you'll sleep it off, or just watch what you eat and it might make you feel better. And there's so many um, pearls of wisdom around that conventional medicine has not gotten up to, but I think we are getting to a more holistic approach. At least I hope.
I
And
hope so.
also with the current coronavirus crisis, there are so many um, re-evaluations about the medical systems, at least in Switzerland and in Europe, where I can kind of get a glimpse into it. And what you said about the quality of life and the quantity of years that we live, that's also a thing that has been discussed now, because it's affecting a lot of elderly people,
Mm.
and the way we reanimate people in hospitals and how long and how much, that's a big debate now, as much
There's
as.
a great book I recommend on that if you're interested, called Being Mortal
Oh yeah,
by
I
Atul
love.
Gawande. He's an Indian American doctor. Really, really beautifully um, put. I think everybody should read it, actually. Even young people, because it's made me think about, how do I want my next 40 years to be, or 30 years to be, or whatever I have. Do I want it to just be sustaining my body, or do I want it to be quality living with good energy and good it's a very nice insight, that book, into the quality of living versus quantity. Being
And have you
mortal.
changed something in your life based on that, or based on your insights?
Yeah, I mean, that was one of several books over the last few years. But certainly I'm more skeptical of myself running towards the Advil before saying, wait, maybe I'm just dehydrated. Or even with my kids, like really, really hardly ever give them antibiotics. When we were kids, if we had the sniffle, we were given an antibiotic, because there was less wisdom about, the importance of not giving antibiotics because of microbial resistance, etc. But also, because I had my kids in my 30s, whereas my parents had me and my brother and my sister in their 20s. I feel like I have a responsibility to myself and to my kids to be really healthy for them as well as for me, and to enjoy a quality of life that I can share with them into my 60s and 70s. So I recognize that I need to invest in that now. And investing in that now doesn't mean supplementing like crazy and taking medications every time. No, it means understanding the function of my biome, understanding where I may have underlying issues that I can find the root cause of and solve, so that I don't go down the pattern of medicating. Recognizing that I don't have to work out 7 days a week, but I really should 2 or 3 times a week. I know I work a lot, but for my well-being, I need to do that 2 hours of yoga a week, or 1 hour of meditation, or, and there, you say, I don't have time, but really, if you carve out just a little bit, the impact is just, the ripples are, and then I'm more energetic and I'm in a better place for my kids, rather than being stressed all the time and running around. And so they've all impacted me, the collection of books I've read over the years and people I've spoken to and things I've seen, that you have to invest in yourself and your family in a different path of what well-being means, so that as we age, yeah, I really want it to be quality. I'm okay going 5 years earlier than conventional medicine could take me, if they're good quality, as opposed to being completely dependent in a nursing home and having, being medicated 24 hours a day. I'm not interested in that. I want to be able to live well and have my husband live well and the people around me. I mean, God only knows what our fate is, right? But as much as possible, if we know this early in our life that we can control some of that outcome by our lifestyle, then it doesn't seem logical for me not to do that.
Well, I have so many more questions, but I also want to give Stephanie a chance to ask her questions. So maybe if you have one right now, and I'll come back later.
Yeah, sure. I want to thank you for all those tips. It's really good to know also how to approach my own health life balance, I would say. Do you have like any other tips for like us young agents or potential agents of transformation? And how could we start our personal transformation journey? And how did you start? And what do you think is important to do or to know when doing so?
I think the key word, and I've had some, I didn't realize it until somebody said it to me only recently, actually, at Home of Humanity, funnily enough. One of the people I was there with from Jordan, she said to me, you know what? It's amazing how much self-awareness you have. And I didn't think about it then. I thought, really? I have self. And then I started going over what I was talking about, or what I was sharing, and I realized that was probably, obviously it wasn't there when I was 20 or when I was 15 or even when I was maybe even 25 or 30, but with time, I think that the strongest tool is to invest in your self-awareness. And you may recognize things you don't like, and you may recognize patterns of behavior that are not good for you right now. But the mere fact that you're aware, that you're willing to look inwards and see, is already a step in the right direction. To just go forward blindly, following trends and doing whatever your friends are doing, and whatever's trendy, and not investing in looking inwards, it's not going to get you anywhere. And more importantly, there may be a time, and I've seen this with many people. So I was lucky and unlucky as a teenager. I went through a little bit of depression as a teenager. I was kind of bullied in school for a while. I went to a new school as I was in high school, and I had a rough year. And due to whatever my home construct was, or everybody's story is complex to a certain degree. I internalized a lot of things, and I started having episodes which I only years later understood were panic attacks. And my parents were worried that there was something wrong with me physically, and they took me to all these doctors because I was fainting. And then one doctor just said to my parents, leave the room, I want to talk to her. And he asked me a few questions, and he said, listen, you just have anxiety. But it was like a taboo subject. Nobody talked about it, and certainly not in a teenager to have anxiety. Like, she comes from a good family, and she goes to a top school, and what could she be anxious about? But anxiety is not about that. Now people talk about it much more openly. Now I talk about it with my own children who are very young, but then it was almost unthinkable. And so I remember that he made me feel okay about it, and accepting. And I even took a little mild medication for a while. And then I went to university in England, and I don't know, that space just gave me a kind of freedom, and you get to know yourself. And what I found is that people who start recognizing themselves and looking at their life pattern and looking at the things that cause their insecurities and healing those insecurities, and building I'm still working on that stuff. We all do. But when you become aware of it, you become armed with an ability to be immune a little bit to things. So someone who's never been through that at an early age, who just steamrolls ahead in life and just follows the trends and never looks inwards, and just is busy, and smokes and eats badly and takes the Advil every time he has a headache, and like most people live, right? They get hit with something like coronavirus, or they get hit with a trauma in their life, and they fall down into a pit that is very difficult to get out of. And they get into a depression, they get physically addicted to things, they get dependent on drugs, etc., medications. And I find that part of the reason for that big drop is because they don't recognize the beginning of the decline. So when you've been through depression or you've been through anxiety young, or you're aware of what that means, the minute it comes close in my life, all my radar comes up. I go, oh, I know this. I don't want to go back down into that dark place. So you start doing the things that help you overcome it, or see the bright side, or boost your positivity, or meditate on what you have and what's good, and move away the demons. So I would say, sorry, that was a long answer to a simple question. The self-awareness, like just really invest in understanding yourself and your reactions, and what makes you tick, what makes you happy, what makes you anxious, what are you insecure about. And for women, there's so much more than men, right? Whether it's body image, or it's social anxiety, or it's there's so many, to be a superwoman. And I went through a phase in my 30s, like how can I be a superwoman? How can I be a great mom and a great wife and a great homemaker and great executive in my job, and do community building, and da. And at some point you have to stop and say, hello, you can't. And it's okay. You can be a superwoman in recognizing that you can't, and doing the best that you can in all those things, and being human, and carving some time out for yourself. But that comes with age, I guess. But just being aware of it early is good.
Thank you. Yes, we'll try to be aware of that, I guess. I'll give it back to Leandra.
Thank you so much. That was so insightful and hit very close to home at some parts. I also wanted to ask, kind of connected to that. So this was your answer was more about yourself and changing yourself, and how to enable yourself to become a transformer and inspire other people. How do you enable other people to change, and especially in your community building work, how do you empower people to create this lasting change that you do?
So this is something I'm still learning and still working on. But for example, I have a really close-knit team in the community building department that I run. So it's very important for me that we meet frequently, and that it's informal, and it's void of hierarchies. And we do these things called care circles at MedLabs. So a care circle is not a meeting. A care circle is a space where you can share an idea, share a thought, share a concept, like empathy or tolerance, or whatever subject you just throw out there. And then everybody shares how they feel about that, and then shares about how that is incorporated in our workspace and in what we do for the community. So if I'm talking about empathy, what empathy means to me may be different what it means to you and to Stephanie, but overall we come to an understanding, and then we say, wow, that's, what we want to aspire to is that everybody, because you may share how nice it feels when someone's empathetic towards you, and I may share how good it feels to empathize with someone else, but overall we all feel that the empathy is very positive. So then how do we take that as a team and make sure we practice it amongst each other, and we're more sensitive to each other? And then next step, how do we instill that in sort of the people in the lab who are meeting patients? So we do a lot of work on reminding our staff that the patient who walks into the door is already coming from a point of weakness, meaning they're coming to a medical institution because they're ill, or because someone they love is ill. So they are naturally worried about themselves or someone else. They are feeling vulnerable. And so it's our duty to not just take them as a number and say, here, let me take a blood sample from you, and here's your appointment, bye-bye. It's to be gentle, and it's to tell them, hopefully everything will be okay. Please relax here. I'll be back with you in a second. What are you feeling? And then to talk to them maybe even a little bit about, are you sleeping well? Are you eating well? And so that the person coming in is actually sometimes shocked at how empathetic the staff are. Like, well, they asked about, or if he brings his mother, a month later he may come in for himself, and the staff will say, how's your mom? We haven't seen her in a while. And they'll say, wow, I can't believe you remembered my mother who was here last month. So these little things then have a ripple effect, because then that person leaves the lab and goes and says, those people at MedLabs, they really care. It's not just work. It's they ask about things beyond your blood work, right? So, and then that ripples out to hopefully that, you know, inspires him in his job when he meets a client to maybe take the time to be a little bit more empathetic, because it felt so good when it was done to him, right? So maybe do it to someone else. And you create a kinder world in a very small way, in small ripples. And it's not always like that. Not all of our 450 staff are super empathetic and wonderful, but we work towards that. And it starts with the core teams who believe in those things, who are familiar with what it means to be integral, and to then present that in a very understandable way to the rest of the company or the other teams. And then if we practice it with them and we practice it with each other, then they practice it with the patients, and then the feedback they get is inspiring, and so it pushes them forward to keep doing that, and then you hope that it ripples out.
That's amazing, and sounds really interesting how these small changes can actually have a big impact and a lasting change. That's very interesting.
Yeah.
Now, as a last question, maybe I have thought about a question that I want to ask all of the Northern interviews, and because it is about knowledge and wisdom and creation, and also in connection with home, I wanted to ask you about one thing that your mother taught you, because motherly wisdom is something that is very early in our life and very close to home.
Resilience, I would say. So that's very interesting. As my father, I work with him still. It's very easy for me if you had said, what have you learned from your father? I would say, oh, he's always been my guru of balance and, you know, harmony and stuff. He's, you know, growing up, he was like my Buddha. He always weighed every situation. And no matter how big the problem was, he was able to say, it's okay, let's break this down and look at both sides and then calmly come to us. So that my mom so my dad's calm and my mom is the more fiery, you know, she's half Austrian, actually, my mother. She's half Austrian, half Lebanese. She grew up in Lebanon, but her parents divorced very young, so she had a tough childhood, and then there was the war and whatever. But she's extremely empathetic and warm and loving on the inside, but her outside, her exterior, is pretty tough, right? And she's very like, pull yourself together, and, you know, which at the time as a teenager when you weren't feeling very well wasn't very helpful. But in hindsight now, I recognize and I appreciate her. She's like a rock. Like, she's just, you know, you keep moving forward, and you just be resilient and be kind. So resilience and kindness, I would say.
Thank you very much. That was really nice.
I wanna touch on something, because I realized that in all this discussion we didn't really go into the Northern per se. So maybe a couple of words there, because with MedLabs, when we went through the transformation journey with as a company with Alexander and Professor Ronnie, who I'm sure you know as well, we took the whole company through this journey. I wrote a little book about it called MedLabs Pulse, and how we transformed marketing, for example, into community building, how we transformed finance into sustainability, and HR into awakening consciousness. And then, because we're a scientific company, everything in the realm of the science. So the testing we do, the quality assurance, the materials management, the IT, all of that was placed in the North. And how did we evolve that into knowledge sharing and knowledge creation? And we had a bit of a hard time making what all of that is implicitly, that we all know. We're all scientists, we know about the science, but how do you make it explicit, right? So the implicit to explicit is quite difficult with the Northern. With the Eastern, it's easier. You share stories together, you expose people to the importance of meditate. You know, I find it's easier to communicate, and the community is all about communication, so that's not an issue. But with the Northern, the scientific is kind of box, right? So you want to take that box and break down the wall and have all that knowledge being spread. So what we did when we became integral, and it's still an ongoing journey, is we dedicated every year to a theme. So the first year was care. So getting the overall concept of CARE within our staff. The second year was the C. So everything was centered around community building. So my team and I had to do a lot of work on that, and it was wonderful. the third year was awakening, which was pretty challenging actually. They weren't really able to, I would say, instill it easily. But again, it's very fluffy and frou-frou, and in an Arab conventional society that's quite religious, it's not easy. For me, I said it's easy because I'm a very spiritual person, but overall as a country, as a society, it's not an easy path to tread, but they got it in there, which is great, and it's getting stronger now. And this year was the year of R. This year was the year of knowledge sharing and knowledge creation. So I sat together with the team leaders of the science and said, oh, how are we going to do this? And so we created something called the knowledge. I haven't been in the office for so long, I'm already forgetting that. What was it? We did a knowledge roadmap. So our logo is like an electrophoresis. So it's kind of like the heartbeat. Yeah. So that part of the logo, we created it like a road. We put a little red car and we said, this is 2020 and we are going on a knowledge journey. So we're going to bring everybody on board this knowledge journey. And along the way, per month, there are going to be activities and opportunities to share knowledge internally with each other and externally through care circles, through seminars, through online, through all these different ways where we get people who have so much implicit knowledge. I mean, they have years of experience and it's all bottled up, and we give them the space to share that. And we give staff who have had amazing experiences with patients an opportunity to share that, because sharing all of that knowledge just enriches everybody, whether it's scientific or otherwise. But obviously our main focus was the science. So I just wanted to say that the creating knowledge comes naturally in some instances, but it comes. You can't. I mean, you can work towards creating knowledge, especially if you're in research and that sort of thing. But in your day-to-day work, I feel like step one before creating is actually sharing, because the more you share knowledge and the more knowledge people have, the more you're opening parts of their brain to seeing new opportunities. And those new opportunities that they now see because of the sharing can lead to creating. So for us, we took it backwards. We said, let's do a lot of sharing. And then maybe out of all the sharing, which is basically like brainstorming, right? So if we all brainstorm together, we have an aha moment because all the knowledge has been put out there, and suddenly I see things differently and I say, oh, why don't we do this out of the sharing? And then that's knowledge creation. So I just wanted to say, from our perspective at MedLabs, we approached it that way.
That's very interesting. Do you then, just a quick question because I can't resist, do you decide on a specific topic that you then share knowledge about, or do you assign a certain person who just shares some knowledge, or how do you
okay
go about
so
it?
first, there's two parts to that question. So there's the internal knowledge sharing inside the company, and what we do is we get feedback from different people on what areas are lacking knowledge, right? So what areas are people not very strong on? So let's just say it's how we do microbiology at MedLabs, as a very scientific example, right? So then the head of microbiology will share information in that area internally. Let's say it's something about awakening or something about communication or community. And then we'll find the person in the company who really embodies the values of communication, and they have a platform to share that. And it's a two-way engagement, of course. So that's one, with internally identifying what needs more knowledge sharing and who to give it. On the external knowledge sharing, which is basically our role sharing information with the public. So there we have to, and now of course with Corona, it's very poignant. So we have a responsibility to share what we know as a company with our audience. So and of course there's loads out there now, we're kind of oversaturated with what are the symptoms of Corona and what should you do and what are the safety precautions and how you should sanitize. Okay, so now, just today, me and my social media team were saying, okay, enough of that. Now let's focus on the things that are useful while you're in lockdown, that are useful going forward, that are useful for your immune system. So let's have a whole Mythbusters about sleep or nutrition, or let's focus on nutrition for immunity specifically. Sleep for immunity. So we're still in science, we're still in immunology, we're still in resisting Corona or other viruses, but we're taking a different tack, because people are maybe they have a lot of knowledge on how to wash their hands. They don't have enough knowledge about really how important good sleep is and how medically impactful it is, or how nutrition can impact their, and now it's the holy month of Ramadan, so people are fasting. And so when they break their fast, there's a good way and a bad way. The bad way, which is the more common way, is to just, I'm starving, and you just eat everything at once and you just load yourself with all the wrong stuff. And the right way is to start with a date, a bit of soup, drink some water, take a break, have a salad, you know, so that you're doing the right things even after fasting, so you get the benefits. So there's a knowledge sharing again, internally and externally, and we look for areas that people could benefit from, where they lack knowledge, and we research it intensely, and we make sure all our sources are correct. We talk about it amongst each other. We all agree that we believe in what we're saying, and then we put it out there.
Thank you so much. This just gives me so many ideas about scientific companies and how to make them integral, and I think this is really making the world much better because it just produces much more than just scientific knowledge, and it just establishes a much broader ground to walk on for everybody, I think.
I think if you have a mission going forward, as you go into the working world and you graduate, you're already on the right path. And it is, I think, to make wherever you work, have an impact on them to see an integral path. So, I mean, whether, you know, they're manufacturing medicines, or they're manufacturing, you know, soap, or they're or you're working in a consulting company, or you're working in whatever you're doing, I believe more and more that every aspect of every industry, of every kind of work, can be seen from an integral perspective and can be practiced from an integral perspective. And it will only improve the end product and the success of the company on the one hand. You just have to get people on board to seeing that. But more importantly, it'll impact the receivers. And that's what we ultimately want to do, right? So impact the community that is receiving whatever it is we're producing in a positive way, and have that ripple effect that ultimately goes back to the beginning of where we started, which is well-being.
Thank you very much. Now, as a conclusion, maybe, would you be happy to show a bit of your home?
Yeah, that's fine. I'll give you a quick tour.
Yeah.
So right now we're in my living room. So the living room is the space where, I'm gonna try and show it to you from, how do we do this? We're coming from here, that's our living room. So I was sitting right there. And those two are huge photographs that my husband and I bought. So when we were in Mexico a few years ago, in Jordan, we're landlocked. And my husband and I love the sea, but we can't see the sea. So when we saw these, and you can see it's actually a photograph of people at the beach. We bought them and we thought, oh, put them in our living room, because the sea has this calming effect. And whenever it gets too much, what, mommy? Yes, you can. Bassem, say hello. Hi. That's my son, Bassem. So we put this for the calming, and that's my daughter. Hi. And on this side of the wall, also there's loads of photographs of the whole family, and of me and my husband as kids, and our kids, and there's more here, and these are all from. So it's these 3 walls of photos, my sister's wedding, and so that's the living room. It's the heart of our home. And then there's a lot of artwork that my daughter and my son have done, but their rooms are just full of my, artwork. But we have to show you this one because those are all my daughter. We have to show my son's. Oh, that's his artwork. So that's the heart of the house. Then I'll take you backwards to the front of the house. So this is the corridor with the book collection, and then this is the kitchen. So that's the kitchen. So we live at a very high spot in Amman. So there's the front door, and that's the entrance. So we have this little greenery area under the stairs, which takes us upstairs. I'll tell you a little bit about my home for humanity in terms of the art collections from around the world. So this is our sitting room and dining room. That's my husband. He's created a little office in the corner. our piano, because my daughter takes piano lessons. So the art is important. These are Jordanian artists. That one's from Bali, Lebanon. This is a friend of mine who's an artist. My husband took all these pictures when he lived in London. And this is a great picture from Mexico as well. I don't know if you can see it. So it looks like everybody's sideways. So actually all the shadows are upright and all the people are sideways. But you see more detail in their shadow about what they're doing than in their person. So we thought that was kind of cool. Well, that's our home.
Thank you so much. That was really nice. And as you said, when you mentioned Home for Humanity, it really gives a glimpse of a person when you see the home and also the art that you collect over the years.
Yeah.
Such a different window into a person's life, I think.
Absolutely. And I was looking yesterday when I was thinking about your just up there. I mean, you can see over there. So there's the Buddha from Bali. I have my little bird from Paris. I have that statue, the wooden statue from Havana. Some things my daughter and son made. Some things from Thailand up there, from Greece. So and I suddenly thought, wow, we're really blessed to have a collection of items from around the world, but also I love it when an item in your home immediately triggers memories, right? Like the smell of something can bring back memories, and you immediately remember, oh, I remember when we were in Havana walking and we got that, or I remember how I felt at that time. Or so I think these collections, and how much I loved each of those cultures as well, and how much insight I got into how others see the world. That's it. All ends up, piling on into your subconscious outlook on the world and life.